The day was fading. Sunday, June 9th, 1912. In the small town of Villisca, Iowa, the air grew cool and still. Long shadows stretched across dusty streets, swallowing the last of the afternoon sun. Villisca was a place of familiar rhythms, a place where the whistle of the evening train was a reliable clock, where neighbors knew each other not just by name, but by the sound of their footsteps on a wooden porch. It was a town built on the predictable turning of seasons, on the shared faith of a close-knit community. Life here was simple. It was safe. No one locked their doors at night. There was no need. The real dangers, people believed, were far away in the sprawling, anonymous cities. As dusk settled, the town began to exhale. Lamps were lit in parlor windows, casting warm, yellow squares onto manicured lawns. The scent of wood smoke, late-blooming lilacs mingled in the air. Families gathered around their dinner tables, the clatter of silverware and quiet conversation drifting through open windows. This was the sound of peace, the sound of a world in order. Children were called inside, their games of tag and hide-and-seek ending, as the fireflies began their nightly dance. The day had been ordinary, marked by church services in the morning and lazy visits with friends in the afternoon. Nothing suggested this night would be any different from the thousands that had come before it. But beneath the placid surface of this Sunday evening, a subtle disquiet was beginning to stir, unseen and unheard. They believed they were safe. They were wrong. The nightmare was already walking among them, silent and patient. On the corner of East 2nd Street and East 5th Avenue stood a modest white frame house. This was the home of the Moore family. Josiah B. Moore, known to everyone as JB, was a prominent local businessman. He ran the town's most popular farm implement store, a testament to his hard work and keen mind for business. His wife, Sarah, was a pillar of the local Presbyterian church, known for her kindness and her dedication to her family. The house was filled with the energy of their 4 children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul. The Moore house was a hub of activity, a place of warmth and laughter. On this particular Sunday, the home felt even more full. Ina Stillinger. The house was alive with the happy exhaustion that follows a day of celebration. As night deepened, the lights in the neighboring houses began to extinguish one by one. But in the Moore house, a single lamp was left burning in the downstairs parlor. Its soft glow spilled from the window, a solitary beacon in the darkness. This small, seemingly insignificant detail would later become a crucial breadcrumb in the labyrinth of questions that followed. An oil lamp was not something one left burning all night without reason. Fuel was expensive, and the risk of fire was ever present. For a family as practical and orderly as the Moores, it was an anomaly. It was the first sign that something was out of place. The night passed. The moon climbed high in the sky and then began its slow descent. Near the back of the property, hanging innocently on a fence post, was a slab of bacon wrapped in a cloth. Beside it, someone had left a buggy trace. These items were mundane, yet their placement was peculiar, their presence unexplained. The slab of bacon, weighing a few pounds, seemed to have been taken from their own icebox, yet it was left outside, abandoned. As the sun began to rise on Monday, June 10th, the town of Villisca started to stir. Mary Peckham, the Moore's next-door neighbor, stepped out onto her porch. She noticed the stillness of the house next door. It was unusual, but this morning, there was no sign of movement. The curtains were all drawn, the doors remained shut. The silence was heavy, unnatural. She approached the front door and knocked. The sound echoed, followed by more silence. She knocked again, harder this time. Still, nothing. Each unanswered knock was a confirmation that something was terribly wrong. The nightmare that had unfolded in the darkness was about to be dragged, screaming, into the light of day. Ross Moore was at work when Mary Peckham found him. He immediately left his work and headed for his brother's home. He had his own key. He inserted it into the lock. He turned it. The mechanism clicked. He pushed the door. It swung inward, opening into the dim parlor. The first thing he noticed was the smell. A coppery metallic odor hung heavy in the air. He stepped inside, calling his brother's name. "JB?" As his eyes adjusted, he saw the small downstairs bedroom just off the parlor. On the bed, he could see two small forms under a blood-soaked sheet. He did not go any closer. He did not need to. He knew with a sickening certainty that he was looking at death. Ross Moore stumbled back out of the house. He ran from the porch and shouted to a neighbor, "Get the sheriff. Something is terribly wrong at the Moores." The news spread like fire. Within minutes, a small crowd had gathered outside the Moore house. The town marshal, Henry Hank Horton, arrived quickly. He saw what Ross had seen. Then, steeling himself, Marshal Horton walked into the house. He slowly climbed the wooden staircase. He came to the master bedroom. The scene that greeted him was one of utter carnage. A heavy, blood-stained axe leaned against the wall. It had been taken from Josiah Moore's own woodshed. It was the murder weapon, left behind as if it were an afterthought. Authorities were overwhelmed. Some slipped inside before the house was secured. They trampled potential evidence. The house became a public spectacle. As dusk fell, a primal terror gripped the community. Doors that had never been locked were now bolted and barricaded. Men sat up all night, armed, guarding sleeping families. The investigation began in a state of chaos. Investigators walked through the house, photographing and noting details. They noted the strange details. Every mirror had been covered. In the kitchen, a bowl of bloody water on a table. Beside it, a plate of uneaten food. It seemed he had helped himself to a meal after committing the murders. Outside, more clues were found. A slab of bacon, a small hand axe. A keychain was found on the floor. It did not belong to the Moores. Investigators noted the lack of forced entry. The killer had a key, or had hidden inside, waiting patiently. The first and most obvious suspect was a man named Frank F. Jones, an Iowa state senator. He was Josiah Moore's former employer and his current business rival. Some said Moore had been the better salesman, taking a significant portion of Jones's business with him. Another line of inquiry focused on a traveling man, William Blackie Mansfield. He was also accused as a serial killer, suspected in similar axe murders in Kansas, Colorado, and Illinois. The theory: Mansfield as a professional killer, possibly hired by Senator Jones to eliminate a rival. The investigation took a shocking and bizarre turn. The focus shifted to Reverend George Kelly. Later, while traveling by train, he reportedly confessed the crime to a fellow passenger. He spoke of a voice commanding him to slay utterly. In 1917, 5 long years after the murders, Reverend George Kelly was finally indicted and brought to trial. A second trial was held, and this time, the result was decisive. Reverend George Kelly was found not guilty. The acquittal of Reverend Kelly did not bring closure. It did the opposite. It shattered the town into bitter, warring factions. Friendships that had lasted a lifetime were destroyed. Families were divided. The social fabric of Villisca was torn apart. The Moore house on East 2nd Street stood empty and silent, a constant, grim reminder of the horror. By the late 20th century, the house had been purchased and preserved, not as a home, but as a museum. Visitors could walk the same floors the Moore family had walked on their final night. Ghost hunters, history buffs, all searching for their own answers within its haunted walls. The modern world brought new tools for investigation, but the evidence was too old, too contaminated. The trail had gone cold 100 years ago. The story endures because it is a story about the fragility of safety. It reminds us that behind any locked door, in the quietest of towns, the unthinkable can happen. But there is one final, haunting detail. On the night of the murders, Sarah and Josiah Moore went upstairs to their bedroom. Their door was closed, but it was not locked. The killer did not need a key for every room. He only needed to turn the knob. The unlocked bedroom door is perhaps the most tragic breadcrumb of all. It is a symbol of the simple, trusting world the Moore family inhabited. The killer walked through that open door, and in doing so, he closed the door on an entire town's sense of peace, forever. The silence he left behind still echoes in that house, a quiet, unending scream.